Hey everybody, this is Mike with the One Stop Co-op Shop, and I'm doing a video that I think I started last year, which is looking at my top games of the year so far, halfway through. And this time I'm going to do 3 lists, my top 5 crowdfunding games so far, my top 5 released games that I've covered this year so far, and then related to the second list, but slightly different, my top 5 games that were released this year, because some of the ones previously are ones that I covered this year, but came out in 2021 or earlier. Well, let's jump right in, because there are a lot of awesome games to talk about. So I'll start with my top crowdfunding game so far for the year, and at number 5 we have Astro Knight. This is the re-implementation of Aeon's End, but in a sci-fi setting. And even though my love for Aeon's End has faded quite a bit, because I still don't find the deck building very engaging in that one, Astro Knight doesn't really fix any of that, but I do like how they have a river drafting deck building system, more like Ascension, where you can kind of get different cards each time, compared to Aeon's End, where you have like the limited set of cards. I think that makes things more engaging, especially, I imagine, once they have more expansions come out. And also, the big thing is that setup for the game and like playing the game is way quicker with Astro Knights. And again, not loving Aeon's End, the idea that I can get the game to the table very quickly and play that good co-op yumminess in a faster time is very appealing to me. So I like Astro Knights. I think I'll probably like it way more than Aeon's End, especially once they have some expansions that kind of boost out the content. And we know they love to do expansions. So yeah, this is my number 5 crowdfunding game of the year so far. Next is my number 5 release game for the year so far, and that is Paint the Roses. I've been really on a deductive, like cooperative game kick recently with Letter Jam, Paint the Roses, So Clover, just like all kinds of games like that. Light, easy to teach games I can play with my kids or my casual gaming friends. And yeah, Paint the Roses is one of the best of the bunch. I love how tactically deep the cooperation and like clue giving can get, but also the fact that I can just play with my 6-year-old and give him like the easy clues, and the game still functions that way. So this is a really good one for me. I just did my review really recently just so that I could make sure that it counts for the list. So this is my number 5 for retail releases. Back to crowdfunding, my number 4 is Blade Rondo. This is a previously released game in Japan, but they're getting a port over to English for the first time. And this is a 1v1 fighting game. If you don't know, I love those. That's why I made solo modes for Exceed and BattleCon and Sakura Arms and all these games. But this one already has a solo mode and it works really well. And the cool thing is there's 5 different sets and each one has its own unique solo mode. I've only mostly played it solo, so I can't say if I love it. This is sort of an aspirational ranking, but I really enjoyed what I played of the first set. So the idea that there are 5 more sets and things kind of branch out in exciting different ways, I think sounds awesome. So I'm really, really excited to play this one. My number 4 crowdfunding game so far. And then my number 4 release game is Burn Cycle, the latest from Chip Theory Games. This is a cooperative and soloable stealth game where you're sneaking around as robots and you're also like on the network. It's not, I've said this before, it's not necessarily going to be one of my favorite games of all time, like Too Many Bones and Cloudspire are, but I still think it's really solid. I really love the way they did stealth. It feels to me like a stealth video game in a lot of ways, and that's what I'm kind of looking for in stealth games. So yeah, this one is very good. I want to play it more, maybe never 3 or 4 players too much, because I do find that it can get a little bit long, especially with more floors. But for a solo play and 2-player play especially, this one is a lot of fun. And next, my number 3 crowdfunding game. This is one that I just covered, but man, I really enjoy it. This is Leviathan Wilds. If you haven't seen my video for this one yet, it's heavily based on Shadows of the Colossus, and you are moving and like jumping and climbing around these giant creatures as they try to bat at you and smash you away. It's got really exciting card play, great cooperation between players. It's an incredibly tense tactical puzzle, and even though I've only played about a quarter of the Leviathans that'll be in the full campaign, and only a few of the classes that they'll have, it looks like it'll have a lot of legs in terms of variety of how you build your deck and how you kind of tackle the monsters. And yeah, I just really enjoy this one. It quickly shot near the top of my list, even after only playing it so recently. As for our number 3 release game, this is Isla and Something Shiny. I think I just released this video this week or last week because I wanted to get it in before I did this list. This is a sort of choose-your-own-adventure-ish game where you progress through several scenarios. There is some branching in what happens, and it has a sort of a mechanic similar to Paleo in that you go through the same deck of cards over and over again in random orders, but you're kind of like dealing with your resources, and cards will like tie into other cards, and some cards will unlock new cards. And this one, you know, it's a very limited game in terms of replay. Well, I say that, but I've already played through the entire thing like 7 or 8 times. But it does have like limited replay. But I think the core gameplay loop, the core mechanics are consistently engaging and entertaining. Again, it's a lot like Paleo, and that's one of my favorite recent games. I think the narrative and like the story that you kind of tell together and the meaning behind it are really just deep and interesting. I want to play with my wife. She's only played like the first scenario, and I want to take her through the entire thing. Then I'll probably pass it on to somebody else. But while you are getting through it, while the replay lives for a little while, I think it's one of the most beautiful kind of choose your own adventure slash narrative-based adventure games I've ever played. So really love Isla and Something Shiny. I'm not sure what distribution looks like. I'm not sure how easy it is to find a copy. Maybe one of you can get mine after I'm done with it, but I think this is a great game. And now to my number 2 crowdfunding game. I'm so excited about this one. This is Skytear Hordes. This is a tower defense cooperative game for 1 to 2 players. And the reason I love this so much, why I'm so hyped for it, is that when I played it, it really felt like I was doing that Magic the Gathering thing, like carefully choosing when to use my instants and my spells and summon my monsters and who to block with to get these incredible combos and to smash things apart. I only played with like the very basic prototype that didn't have that much stuff yet, and the balance is not done. And even with that, this was such a blast. I will say the 2-player balance was a total mess, so I know they're working on that more, and I hope they do so. But even if they don't get that right, even if solo is the only like true way to play, I love the solo play so much that this was enough to propel it to my number 2. So yeah, Skytear Horde, definitely want to play this more when it's delivered. And now my number 2 game is Unsettled. Whoa, Unsettled, you are so good. I love Unsettled. If Colin had not recommended it and played the heck out of it, he did so many playthroughs on the channel, I might have never given it a try. But this is an incredibly tense and thematic and funny, like when are games funny? Almost never. Adventure game of survival, kind of like similar Robinson Crusoe in some ways, although I like it way more than Robinson Crusoe personally. And if anything proves how much I love this game, I went all in every single expansion for the next Kickstarter. I'm trying to get everything I can for this one. So yeah, Unsettled, one of my favorite games over the last several years. I want to play it more. And now we come to my number 1 crowdfunding game of the year so far. This is Tidal Blades 2, which is a campaign-based dungeon crawler. And man, this game is just so good. I've played every scenario of it. I am hyped to play more. I love the initiative system. I like how enemies activate, the way you play cards to your board to do your actions. It's so consistently engaging compared to so many other dungeon crawlers that I tend to get like bored with really quickly. So yeah, cannot wait to play more of this one, see more scenarios, continue the story. Tidal Blades 2, my number 1 crowdfunding game so far. So what's my number 1 release game, even better than Unsettled for me? Well, it's kind of a blast from the past. This is Sentinels of the Multiverse, the definitive edition. I always loved and hated Sentinels because it was so fiddly to play and the balance was a little bit weird. And definitive edition doesn't really take away all the fiddliness, but it does make it a little bit better. But it makes the balance so much more interesting. Even the heroes who did like kind of random things before, even the villains that weren't that much fun to play against, at least so far for all the release people, it's all better. And it just reignited my love of Sentinels. So it's right back on top. Even better for me than Unsettled because I can play this with my family a little bit more easily. So yeah, Sentinels of the Multiverse Definitive Edition, my number 1 released game that I covered in 2022. And now to talk about games released in 2022. So my number 1, 2, and 3 are Sentinels, number 1, Burn Cycle, number 2, and Paint the Roses, number 3, because those are already on the top 5 list, and they were actually released in 2022. But Isla and Something Shiny, I think technically is 2021, and Unsettled as well. I think they like barely delivered or kind of delivered it last year. So Familiar Tales is my number 5. I have major issues with the balance if you play with 3 to 1 player. I think it's a little bit too basic in the deck building and a little bit too basic in the dungeon crawling. But the story, the app, the voice acting, the kind of overall stuff you're doing is a lot of fun. So, it's not a top game for me, but it is good enough out of the games that specifically came out in 2022 and are released that it made my number 5. And my number 4 game released in 2022 is Townsfolk Tussle. This is a really solid boss battler game in the vein of Kingdom Death Monster. For me, it's got some definitely big flaws in the gameplay. I don't love everything about it, but the fact that it has the fun of boss battlers, which is a genre I've started to enjoy quite a bit, in a very short time and without a giant campaign. It's just 4 battles in a row and you're done. I really, really appreciate that. And I think it's got some fun styles, some fun like customization of how things work, nice variety. So really solid game. Not quite in my top 5 of games I covered overall, but of the ones released in 2022, my number 4. All right, everybody, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll be back at the end of the year with my top 20 games for the year and also my top 20 crowdfunding games. But for now, I will see you at the next stop.